to start off here today, we're going to pull up this video of a zombie bug. Alright? Caption is, while it's not alive, it's not even dead. Large number of mind-controlling fungi leads insects to assume the strangest behaviors in order to spread their spores and infect more insects to survive. So this bug right here is a dead bug that's crawling around. The fungi spores are like in its brain, like controlling its limbs and stuff. So you can see, like it has like no guts, like no insides. It's literally hollow. And it's just walking around.
Oh, that's nasty.
That's crazy.
So they just pretty much like hijacked its nervous system.
Yeah, which is wild. I saw that and I had a
That looks disgusting.
Which makes me think if fungi can do that to an insect.
Yeah, why could it not do it to a...
Why could it not do it to human, dude? Like, can you imagine?
So that's one of the wildest things.
Do they know what's that like fungi called?
It doesn't say here.
Like, click on the article.
Yeah. Oh.
Alright, let's
Go back. Hit background. One more.
It disappeared.
Okay.
No, Control F. Control F. And then search. Whatever.
Joe really wants to find this.
I'm really interested.
This actually is super interesting.
This was a W video. Hold up. Can we admit that? Great
Very well
call
about
on
that.
Alright, it's not pulling up.
That's the craziest thing.
But let's segue into something else that I saw that I want to talk about on the theme of parasites. This is another parasite, and what it does is it digs its way into mice's brains, okay? And what it does is it changes those mice, but it's
Mouse is the single.
it changes these mice's brains.
No, these mice. Oh wait.
The brains of these mice.
Whatever. But anyway, they suddenly lose their fear of cats, of their predators. And what they'll do is they'll just like run up to cats like right here and just like sacrifice themselves.
So then the
Like
cat will
automatically.
eat them and get the parasite. Too.
Yeah, so then the parasite will go into the cat's stomach and then that's where it wants to be.
Oh, wow. That's actually
Which is
smart.
wild.
That's a smart tactic.
I know, it's like, dude, what? That's way too smart. Like we don't traditionally assign that type of intelligence to fungi.
Well, and then it still says like if you, like even after they remove the fungus, the brain was still changed.
Yeah.
So it like changed.
Yeah, so it can only reproduce in the cat gut, so it knows that to get there, it has to alter the rodent's brain in order to get there. Like what, like how much, like, I don't understand how evolution could
Take it there.
give rise to something like that. Like how many iterations do you have to go through until...
I mean, that's the thing about bacteria, though, is it reproduces, like, it doubles every couple hours, probably.
Yeah,
The
that is true.
entire
There are
population.
a
So
lot
it's
of
just
iterations.
so many iterations that once one thing like this catches on, it just, like,
But how do you
permeates the entire-
know? How do they know, like, out of all the species in the animal kingdom, how do they know that the rodent is the one that they want to alter? They get the right, like, brain chemistry right, the right
No, but
neural
it's like
connections and
fungi,
stuff like that?
right?
Yeah.
So it's not more like it knows that it's in the rodent.
No,
it's
this
like,
one's a parasite, not a fungus.
But does a parasite
right,
have
it's a
brain?
bacteria, isn't it?
This is a parasite. The other one was a fungi. This is, what is the
But,
difference between them?
Well, I think
Look at the
fungi
parasites
is not,
that-
like, technically considered alive, usually.
No, a fungi is
Or-
alive.
Is it?
Mushrooms are alive.
What's the thing that's...
It's a decomposer. What's the thing that's not alive? Virus?
Oh, yeah, we're thinking of virus.
Look at, do parasites have brains? Because I don't think it's much. They
No
know,
way they have brains.
they know that a rodent, they're in a rodent, like a rodent needs to be the one. It's like there was some mutation.
Yeah, it's just
Because like if you think about it, like your body is like, it's not like you're thinking like, oh, I'm gonna let this like glucose molecules into my cell. It's just like the chemical bonds like are set up in a way where like that's what's gonna happen, like because of like the channels or whatever.
Right, but they're matched directly to the rodent brains in some
Yes. So what probably happened is, like, there was a certain mutation that like happened to like fit into the rodent brain or whatever perfectly.
way. Yeah.
So it's not like it knew.
It didn't, but like the likelihood of it being able to do that
Yeah.
while also being, well, the cat's gut is like the only place that it's able to reproduce.
Yeah, that is a little weird.
Like that is so crazy. That it has both, not just the rodent part, but also the cat's
Well,
piece.
also one thing that, well, maybe not, because then, well, how does that get from the cat back into the rodent? Do you know? Because it reproduces in the cat's gut, but then the rodents are the one that.
I don't think it goes back to the rodent.
I'm not 100% sure. It might just use the rodent as a vehicle.
Yeah.
And
And
then
then once
it
it's
does,
there,
it
it just.
just-
Okay.
So I just thought that was wild.
Yeah, that's completely crazy.
So we covered insects, we covered rodents and cats. Now let's go to humans, okay? So there's this parasite that you can read the headline here. Common parasite linked to personality changes. Eating a raw steak or owning a cat can make you more outgoing. There is this parasite that 22.5% of Americans older than 12 years old have. Okay? Huge portion of Americans. That's
Wait, and it's called toxoplasma. Isn't that the same as the
Yeah.
rat one?
No, the other one was toxoplasma something, and this is.
But it's a
It's a
similar.
different
Does that mean it's a
That
similar
means it's
type?
in like similar family or something.
it's possible. That would make sense.
Like go back to the other one and see what the name was. So that's Toxoplasma gondii. This one was Toxoplasma.
Yeah, it's just exactly.
Toxoplasma gondii.
That's the same thing.
Oh, it's the same parasite, bro.
That's really crazy. Okay.
Well, that makes
That is
sense. No, that makes sense because go up. It says owning a cat,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
so that's probably why. 'Cause it's like if you're a cat.
Dude, I didn't even know that. What?
Yeah.
Okay, so in any case, what this parasite does once you get infected with it becomes permanent. Okay, so you're not getting rid of it, and it's shown to make both men and women more extroverted and less conscientious than people who don't have that infection. So anywhere between a fifth and a fourth of all Americans have this parasite that's manipulating their personality, and they have no idea
So
what this is doing.
the effects are kind of similar to what it does to a rat, just less severe.
Yeah, it says its life cycle must play out in cats and rodents.
Cause like with the rat, it made the rat so fearless. So I guess like you would, the similar human trait would be outgoing. So it made the rat so fearless that it just like goes up to cats and sacrifices.
This is the same kind of thing, dude. Like, for rodents, it makes them less afraid of approaching rats. For humans, it makes them less afraid. You could argue it makes them less afraid of traffic accidents. In such a case that they have a slightly higher rate of traffic accidents.
Huh.
So it's like almost like the fear part of your brain might be lower. Maybe that's why they're more extroverted because they're less afraid
Yeah,
of social interaction.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Dude, that is so weird. It makes me think like we tend to think that we're like our emotions and our thoughts and all that. What if we're just like the sum of like a bunch of like parasites?
Well, it's
or
all like the sum of brain chemistry.
that too, and like they've shown that a huge part of your mood is your gut bacteria. So that's why you take probiotics, and they've shown that you feel less depressed, you feel happier, and all that thing, less anxiety, because like there are neurotransmitters in your gut bacteria. It's like that's like we tend to associate like, oh, I'm happy, I'm sad, like it's me, I'm happy,
Yeah.
I'm sad. In reality, like the gut bacteria is playing a big part in that. So it's like that's not really you.
Well, it's all us, like, because like we were talking about in the first episode, we're a combination of our body and our soul. So like the stuff that goes on in the body just has such a big impact that a lot of people don't think about. most of the time, but everything that goes in our body affects like all of us because we are like one integrated whole. But it's not like we are just our body and we're just the parasites. We're also not just this like floating soul, like spirit in the distance, you know?
But if you can't control this, would you say that that's you? Like that's a part of your identity? If it's like manipulating you in that way?
Yeah, like you got infected. Just
you got
by
infected
chickens.
and you feel more, or you're more extroverted. Is that still you? Like, because it's like not.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
But obviously it affects like the person that you are. I don't know. It's kind of a
Well, but I feel like everything in your environment affects you. So like, you kind of have to include it. Like,
perhaps that's not
everything,
different than
because,
like
like-
the experiences, like the other things in your environment.
because it talks about like how it like changes your dopamine or whatever. But that's all like a result of your experiences and your environment. So it's like you could be a different person. Are you grown like you're in a different environment? But it's like, so is that not, are you not affected by your environment? Or it's like, does that not count?
I think it definitely does count. I mean, this is now where we get into like determinism versus free will.
Yeah.
Where it's like, are we just the result of the parasites in our body and our gut bacteria and our environment? Or do we actually have some sort of free will that can override that? But
Well, also think about like this bacteria makes people less fearful, slightly. But the place where they started from is always going to have much greater impact than this bacteria. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a naturally fearful temperament, like you're not going to all of a sudden be this courageous person. And if you already naturally have a courageous temperament, you're not going to suddenly become this like grand hero or something.
I don't know if we can say that for certain though.
Well,
Because, like,
25% of Americans have this, and they're not all heroes. Right?
Yeah, but the thing is like, it's like it's not as big of an effect in humans.
Uh-huh.
But it's like it's like in mice though. It's pretty much like completely overrides their thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what if there was one that was in humans that could do that?
Okay, here's where it gets weird. What if, hypothetically, China developed a parasite to release into the American population that would lower your loyalty to your state, it would lower your testosterone levels, it would lower your cognitive ability, all these personality traits that are central to our identity? Like, what is stopping countries from like developing this as a way to manipulate the population? Because if it can control your fear levels, like what else can it control?
Yeah, but I feel like we don't even, like, I guess in the future that could happen. Like, we don't have like a good enough understanding of how that works yet.
Yeah, but it
How
kind
do
of
you
seems
know?
like this could happen, like, because lab rats are always like the test subject.
Yeah.
And if this can control rats that well, like obviously it doesn't control humans like that much.
Yeah. It's like you wonder if you like intentionally put like a way more amount of the parasite in your brain, like, because obviously it's not like, it probably like, does like the parasite kill people or does it just like?
No, it just like kind of lingers in there.
Yeah. So like once they put way more in you.
Yeah, I was also thinking like, this could also have positive medical benefits. Like, you could use this to get people over their
Years.
fear, like social anxiety or
Like,
fears.
here, just take this parasite.
Well, no, but like, I mean, that's what we thought about other medical things. Like, here, just eat this mold; it'll make you feel better. Like,
Yeah,
that's
it
what
does have
penicillin
medical
is.
applications.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting. Like, what? I wonder if they've explored that, like intentionally depositing a parasite into someone. But dude, I don't know if we can be so quick to dismiss that countries are utilizing this or experimenting with this.
That's
Because
actually-
you got to think about the Manhattan Project.
Like people.
There were,
No.
I don't know for sure how many people were working on the Manhattan Project, but they were working on it for a very long time, years. This huge operation of people, and they kept it under wraps. No one knew about it. Truman came into office and he had no idea. Like, what is like, you gotta understand that governments are working on projects exactly like that are
there probably is
undercover, and we have no idea. We could just sit here and be like, nah, we don't have the technology for that yet. We don't know how to do that yet. Meanwhile, like, China is like, yeah, we do.
Well, yeah, and we know that China does have like bio labs in order to create weapons. Like, obviously, there's that theory about COVID. And actually,
Let's steer away from that.
okay, fine.
But yeah.
But like, yeah, it's very possible that.
Oh wait, I think I've seen this before.
So I don't know if this is 100% true. Hold on, let me get Wi-Fi figured out. You guys keep talking.
Okay, let's take it back.
One thing I think is interesting about like the parasite, this is kind of like not related, but like the fear is such a like primal thing. Like it's something that keeps you alive. It's not like something it's like been around forever. And like there's fear in every animal. So like that probably like makes sense why it can develop, because like fear is just like a universal thing in all animals.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
So what is the parasite feeding on? Is it feeding on the amygdala, which is like our fear-producing part of our brain, or do you know, Roman?
I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I feel like it's just like it reproduces in your brain or whatever, and like the fear is almost like an adverse effect of it, and like that happened to happen in a way that it's beneficial to it, and it's not like it intentionally was doing that to rats. If that makes sense.
Alright, so I figured out how to pull this up. So speaking about projects that were like under wraps, this is a project that someone released from the US Army. Apparently they're working on an Iron Man suit. I don't know the 100% specifics about it, but like, could you imagine going into battle wearing one of these and
That's
being
so
able to
sick.
fly around?
Can you go back up to the picture a little bit and just kind of explain what the different things mean, what the different parts of the suit are?
Yeah, so it's a skin suit, so it's a complete suit that you wear around your body, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it gives you the ability to like, let's see here. Okay, it doesn't really go into detail
what does
about
it
what
even
exactly you can do.
Does it say you can like something?
Fly, yeah, I want to know if you can
I
fly.
think you can fly based on the picture, but
Here, let's click on this next one. This looks like not a very reputable website. But
Fandomwire.com. It's just a bunch of things at Tony Stark.
let's ignore the credibility of this website and just explore.
let's just hope.
Fingers crossed. Alright,
Right
basically.
there, it's go up a second, go up a little bit.
I think that was a real picture, but maybe.
I know, but I want to read what it's like. Although it's a great initiative, its armored version
Could become an issue.
okay, this just looks so made up. I'm sorry.
Okay, but the other one was NBC News, okay?
Yeah, the other
So,
one was-
okay, in other words, we don't know the specifics, but we do know that they're working on a suit. Whether or not that's actually legit and they're actually going to be able to use that in the future, like, that's to be seen. But we know that they're working on projects like that.
Yeah, sure.
And it just, like, makes me think about what else they're working on that we would see that, we'd be like, what? Like, can you imagine, like, being a citizen and then all of a sudden seeing, like,
Someone flying around.
that, or like the was it the atom bomb from the Manhattan Project?
Yeah.
It's been like, yeah, just out of nowhere, right out of right field. Have no idea.
Yeah, just like the entire city of Hiroshima is gone. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, what?
Should we talk about whether or not that was a good decision?
No.
We could get into that. Probably not.
Okay. Can we talk about Japan as a army during World War II and how wild that was?
Japan is so.
I just read a book about this.
Yeah, that actually really connects to the fear the fear thing too that we were talking about.
Yeah, hold on. Let me pull up my highlights from this book I was reading about Japan. But like people like to say that like, oh, World War II, like we should have never gotten involved in that. But when you look at like Nazi Germany and then along with them Japan, like that is a scary duo. And
It's out of space.
It's really like 12 gigs.
let me pull this up. There's some of the stuff that. Okay, so the book is it's called Rape of Nanking,
Oh, I've heard of
The
that.
Forgotten Holocaust of World War II. And this is interesting because, you know, in history class, we tend to only talk about or focus on the Holocaust, right? How terrible it was, how much of an atrocity it was. Meanwhile, Rape of Nanking, when the Japanese came into China, sieged the city, and basically just started slaughtering civilians, that doesn't get as much press coverage.
In the West.
And
anyway.
it was arguably
Just
as
bad.
worse, if not worse. But like, there are just stories from growing up in that environment of like Japan during that time, and it's just so. Here's a statistic. Allied forces during World War II surrendered at a rate of 1 prisoner for every 3 dead. So like, they would surrender, like 1 prisoner would survive, or would surrender rather, and
Yeah, because their thing
2
was basically
others
no
would.
surrender, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's extremely shameful.
yeah,
And they would. Is it true that they would kill them upon returning if, like, from a prisoner camp if they surrender?
Japanese would.
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
1 out of 120 surrendered for the
my
Japanese,
gosh.
Oh wow.
compared to 1 out of every 3. So that goes to show you how indoctrinated they were. Where
Yeah.
literally they valued loyalty over their life, everything. This one guy says, loyalty is heavier than a mountain and our life is lighter than a feather. So they were taught to devalue their life completely. They had no sense of individualism. Like America, we have like the individual, our rights, our liberty, all that stuff. They were taught that the emperor was the highest, and that was like their only mission in life. And it's just so wild that like we just take individualism for granted. Like we don't even think about that someone could grow up in an environment like that.
I watched a video not too long ago about the kamikaze pilots.
Yeah.
And the kamikaze pilots were like the most honored people in the entire army. They were the top best pilots, and they were chosen for this
Yep.
like great task because they were so loyal. They were so great, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
like, okay, never mind. I'll get into that later. So you can go.
I was just gonna say that like throughout history, like dying the warrior's death was the utmost thing that you could achieve. Like that's what everyone aspired to, is to one day die contributing to your state. And nowadays we don't even think about that. Like that whole concept of honor
Yeah.
and like duty, like we lose that. And I think like definitely we avoid a lot of suffering through that, but we also miss out on a lot of like masculinity, manhood. Like there's virtue in that, and like committing yourself fully to a mission and like being willing to die for something. Like that gives you meaning.
Yeah.
I think we lose a lot of that. But there's another quote. It says, "We made them like this: good sons, good daddies, good elder brothers at home were brought to the front to kill each other. Human beings turned into murdering demons. Everyone became a demon within 3 months." So they would take these people from like the outskirts, like the country towns, and they would just turn them into literally like murdering machines where they would have killing contests. So they started in Japan, they marched over to China. While they were doing that, they would hold killing contests to see who could kill the most civilians on the way.
Oh my god.
And all the villages that they encountered on the way.
In
and
China?
there are literal newspapers posting like the records.
Oh my god.
It is so wild.
That's
like,
horrible.
Disturbing.
they literally valued like that life over everything.
Yeah. Initially, when we were talking about the bacteria, or the parasite earlier, that is able to change kind of human behavior, I was thinking that maybe that could be used to like help indoctrinate people into things like kamikaze piloting, or other things where they're just like giving up like human decency even for their country, like loyalty, whatever. But the way you're talking about it now, like it seems like that's not even necessary. Like people are already willing to do that if you have the proper, like, I guess, indoctrination. I don't know. Do you know what kind of the method they use to do that?
Yeah, they go into it. It was started at like the elementary level. So like they like drilled their elementary school teachers in like camps to make sure that they were enacting the will of the government at every step of the way. And so here's another quote. In every Japanese school, a copy of the rescript was enshrined with the portrait of the empire and taken out each morning to be read. It was repeated that more than one teacher who accidentally stumbled over the words committed suicide to atone for the insult to the sacred document.
Oh my God.
So teachers would literally kill themselves if they read the emperor's work wrong. Like that's just how little they value themselves and how much they value the empire.
Wow.
Like that is so wild, dude. Can you imagine like your elementary school teacher just like
That's
gone on Wednesday because they stumbled over the words?
Oh my God.
And here's the scary thing. People want to say like, oh, those people are different than me. If I was in that position, I would never do that. But it's like, fundamentally, we're all human. We're all dealing with the same human experience. If you think that you wouldn't, growing up, everything around you is leading to that thinking and that ideology. If you think that you would be the one person to like stick out and retain your individualism,
you're lying to
wrong.
yourself.
And you're misleading yourself. So like you were talking about like if you grow up in an environment like that, you don't even need a parasite, dude.
Yeah.
Like your thinking is gonna be changed anyway.
I wonder if the parasite would make it even easier though. Like maybe they don't need all that elementary education if they're just able to like implant this parasite in their soldiers.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you need to do the whole nation, because one of the things that like make this whole like the Japanese soldiers so strong and like devious is that they had the backing of their entire country. Like if they didn't do this, there was nobody at home that was going to be like, oh, good job, you're such a good person. Like everybody's like, if you're not going out and killing hundreds of people, you're a bad soldier, and that's shameful.
We as humans need social approval. Like we like to pretend that we don't listen to people's opinions or don't care about what they think about us, but fundamentally we do. That's like where the whole peer pressure thing comes in. But
What this kind of makes me think about is like in societies where they have like extreme beliefs, but then they try to push it onto everybody, like kind of like 1984, how they like have everyone like indoctrinated into like this absurd thinking. And it's like, but then there's always going to be like a few people that like stand out, right? Like in like North Korea, for example, there's like people that try to escape it and such. So it's like, what if that's where the parasite came in, and they like, instead of like in 1984, how they like torture people like to get them into thinking something, like you just like infect them with the parasite, and that's how you get them to abide by what you want.
The defectors, you just
infect them and then put them back into society.
that's too much power, dude.
Yeah.
You should not have the ability to just change someone's personality like that. I want to stay in. I just want to have a little more. I have so much stuff on Japan, but speaking of like playing with people's personalities, have you guys heard of Operation Midnight Climax and the whole CIA experimentation with mind control?
No.
Wild. Like, dude, we could talk about this for 5 hours, but basically, like, if you think that our government isn't already trying to do that, like, you're wrong. So like 1960s or 50s and 60s, when acid and all the psychedelics like started being discovered, everyone was doing that. What they did was they tried to see if those drugs could be used to manipulate someone's thinking.
Yeah.
So Harvard participated in it. Do you guys know the Unabomber?
I've heard of him.
He was a Harvard student who participated in one of these experiments where they dosed him up with acid like crazy amounts. Like, you should never ever take that much. Fried his brain, and after that he went and became the Unabomber.
He was a terrorist, right?
Yeah. He was a terrorist. But another thing that they would do was they would go into brothels, and they would have like this one-way mirror, and they would look through the mirror, and they would dose up the Johns, the like people who are participating in the brothel with acid and all these other psychedelics, and they would watch the effects on them, unknowing. These people they didn't consent to this. While they were at this brothel. That was a CIA operation.
Oh my God.
Operation Midnight Climax. And like they did all these crazy things with drugs, and it's like there is evidence of that. People there's no doubt in my mind that we're still experimenting with that in some way. We have no idea whether or not it's drugs or not, or parasites or something. Any thoughts?
I mean, it kind of reminds me of the TV show and this book too, but The Terminalist, have you seen that? Okay, well, it's also about like this CIA group that implants this. I don't remember exactly what was the point, but it was that they implanted this tumor into all of these Navy SEALs, into like one SEAL team, because they were hoping that it would like increase their performance or something. I don't remember exactly what. But then, so it reminds me of the same thing. Like, obviously that's fiction, but it was written by a guy who was in the SEALs, and he like understands like how the government works. So it's probably not that far off from, like, obviously that didn't happen in real life, but there are things like that are happening.
Do you guys know who Charles Manson is?
I've heard of him, but I don't.
So he was a cult leader in the 60s.
Oh, the Kool-Aid guy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You can tell the story.
Do you know about this?
I have, but yeah.
Allegedly, there's some connections between the CIA, their experimentation with psychedelics and mind control, and him.
Really?
So his cult was doing tons of acid, and he basically was able to brainwash people to like go out and commit murders for him. And there's this guy, author, who spent 20 years of his life writing this book about it, like the connection. 20 years, dude, on one book. Like tons of research. And I've yet to read it, but I've heard about it. And basically, like, the argument is that the CIA was supplying him with acid to try and experiment with these mind control tactics
To see if they could use it eventually.
Yeah, like a hands-off method. Like, let's give it to him and see like what he can do with it. Where we don't have to get our hands dirty, but we can still see the effects. Yeah. It's like, dude, if that's true, like, obviously there were some effects. 'Cause, like, there were like a ton of murders, and like people were doing crazy stuff under his control. Like, he was able to run a cult off it.
Yeah.
So it's like, we might have some mind control stuff already.
Yeah, not in the way we think of it, but like we were concerned we were talking about Neuralink a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's one way. Like, it just seems like there are so many, and even social media, we were talking about a little bit how like that controls our minds, but there are just so many ways to, like, in today's day and age, to control people's minds that are just emerging. People are figuring them out. It's kind of a scary world out there.
I feel like what that kind of goes down to, though, is like there's like so many different things that like affect your brain, and there's like no one way to like isolate what's making the decisions, because there's just like
too many factors.
There's the millions of factors that go into like literally every decision that's made.
That's where we talked about the information diet last time, about restricting what you like, enter into your mind, because undoubtedly the stuff that you consume has an influence on your brain. That's where like the Netflix shows that people watch, like I gotta wonder if like there is some sort of, I don't know what they would do.
Like agenda.
I don't know what they would manipulate, but undoubtedly, like Stranger Things, Outer Banks, Breaking Bad, all these shows, we may not realize it, but we're watching people on the screen and behave. That definitely does something to us subconsciously about the way that we think about things. Mm-hmm. So it's like you gotta wonder if maybe like there's some, I don't know, action put in place, like in the forming of those TV shows, like maybe slight alterations here, slight alterations there, to maybe alter public opinion. An example of this is in Top Gun. The original Top Gun, there was like a badge with what's the one country that China pretends doesn't exist? Taiwan.
Yeah.
Taiwan. Badge of Taiwan on Tom Cruise's shoulder.
Okay.
And like in the second movie, like China was like pushing really hard to not have that in there, because it's like if that's in there, then people are gonna see that and they're gonna be like, oh, like unconsciously they're gonna be associating that Taiwan as an independent country.
Yeah.
It's just like that small thing is gonna have. They recognize that millions of people are gonna see that, and it's gonna have an impact.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess that gets into what we were talking about in the last episode. We said we would start talking about censorship, and like, is that always a bad thing? Like, I would say there are some, like, as a parent, you have a responsibility to control or to regulate what goes or what your child sees, because like these are his formative years, like 1 through, I don't know, 15 or even older maybe. But every entertainment, every like book that a child reads is gonna affect like how they think about the world. And as a parent, it's your responsibility to like form your child into the person that they should become, right?
You don't want a traumatized child, but you also don't want a soy boy.
Yeah.
And also so like, what do you think about censorship? Like how far can it go? Because I think we all agree that some amount is necessary from like parents or whatever, but like, should the government have any hand in regulating what comes to its citizens?
Okay, so I think we're talking about two different things here. Like, we're talking about parent censorship and then government censorship, and those two are like fundamentally different.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
The intentions are definitely different there.
Definitely.
Parents for censorship, I think it's increasingly like, it's like an impossible line to walk, dude. Because it's like you can try and prevent stuff like porn and like gore violence and all that stuff from your child seeing it, but with how big the internet is and like how kids are, like you don't really stand a chance, honestly.
Well, like, I mean, you can like restrict, like, not give your kids access to the internet.
You
like,
can make it harder.
Unsupervised.
You can make it harder, but then your friend goes over to their friend's house and it's like they don't have any restrictions.
Yeah, so
it's
like you can only control it to a certain
Yeah.
point. I guess.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
it's-
there are also people who are like, if, you know, any device that my kid uses, it's going to have this like restricting software, like Covenant Eyes, where it's like, there's no way or almost no way that you can access porn on this device. And I'm not going to let my kid go over to a friend's house unless their parents have also put this in place for
That's
them.
also, yeah, that gets into like,
Helicopter parent.
no, like parents like don't want you to be friends with a certain person because like they think that's like that kid like isn't as like well parented as you are, essentially. Like they're like, oh, you don't need to be friends with him type of thing, because it's like someone that's more.
But I think honestly that kind of makes sense. Like
Yeah, I know. I think that's the same thing almost. It's like it's a different type of censorship.
So I think, are you still going?
No, I'm good.
I think censorship from a parent's point of view is like one of the hardest lines to walk, because you want to prepare your kid for life, but you also don't want them to grow up too fast. And that's why, like in general, I just feel like parenting is like one of the hardest jobs you can do, because there's no guideline and you're trying to balance on a path that you're constantly going to teeter back and forth.
Well, and especially like because like as a parent, you're gonna have grown up in a different.
Yeah, in a different generation.
Yeah, so like what's right for you? Like what was right for you when you were growing up is different.
We're gonna have to do this with the metaverse, dude. Like how are we gonna balance our kids' social lives, the metaverse, NFTs, all this sort of stuff? I think it's just gonna keep getting harder and harder. So yeah, that's the parent's point of view.
yeah, and also as a parent, like you're still navigating life yourself. Like you're still trying to figure out what's right, what's wrong.
Like you still don't even have it all figured out.
Exactly. And then maybe you change you're like, oh wow, I've been letting my kid have access to this for 10 years, and now I realize that this is actually like ruining him. And then you're like, well, now what?
Yeah.
You know?
Can you look up real quick, Jamie, whether or not violent video games have an effect on our mind? Because that's
Probably going to find a lot of conflicting information.
Yeah.
that's been an argument that I've heard, and I don't know, I question that.
Because one thing that you see a lot with this is it's like, oh, like for example, like school shooters were more likely to play violent video games type of thing, but then it's also like, well, you could say that people that are more likely to shoot up a school are more likely to play the game, not people that play the game are more likely to shoot up the school.
Correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
So let's see here if this is correlation or causation. Well, I mean, I don't know how you would determine causation.
Let's just scroll down to the key points and see, like, that's kind of the main.
That don't correlate with real world violence.
Yeah. So it's pretty hard to determine. But
Crimes among youths have decreased.
I mean, this has been you see the same argument over and over again. Like my mom was saying that like back in the day, it used to be like, if you watch too much TV, it's gonna rot your brain. And then for us, it's been like, if you play violent video games and watch violent movies, like you're gonna turn aggressive. It's like I feel like every generation has some form of censorship that everyone's like, yeah, okay, mom.
There's like a different that's called WWII, or have you heard about that? Or it's like the parents are always afraid of like the newest thing and like how it's gonna affect their kids, and it's like, I don't know if this was, I feel like I heard something along the lines of like, in like the early 1900s, like parents were afraid that their kids were like reading books too much.
Yes,
yeah, I have actually
seen
heard
that.
Like,
they
get out into the
would
real
bring your
world
book and read at the dinner table, and they like,
try and pull up that headline. It's like about reading and like, yeah, I saw that in a newspaper. And it's just like we have changed
and then it's
so
like,
much.
well, it's like it's just you're scared of like whatever is like unfamiliar to you.
That's just like being human, though.
But
I feel like we're afraid of what's
Yeah, but books have been around for so many years. Like, was that ever like a new thing that kids were?
No, look up like Juvenoia. JUVENOIA. JUVEN. OIA.
That's a weird word.
That's kind of a cool word.
Urban Dictionary.
A term coined by is an exaggerated fear about things that influence kids these days.
Yeah.
And every generation imagines itself to be more intelligent than the one that went before it.
Dude, that's gonna be us someday. We're gonna be like the old people who are like,
maybe
your
don't go on the
NFTs.
metaverse.
Back in my day, we didn't have NFTs and cryptocurrency in the metaverse.
Yeah, but it's like you don't really know like what the effect is going to be. Is I guess the point I was making.
Any thoughts on parenting, or should we move on to government censorship?
Yeah, let's move on. We're not parents.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like I have more thoughts, but
So as far as government censorship, Obviously, this is a very thorny and large problem that, I mean, there's no right answer here, I feel like. But I think our democracy is based on free speech. Like, it's written in the founding rules of our country. Free speech should be something that we always aspire to and like try to cultivate, because that's how a democracy functions. It needs to have opposing opinions that, like, that's how you come to an agreement as a democracy. Is you have opposing opinions that battle it out, and then the best opinion wins. It's like we need that. And like during COVID, we saw that like a lot of like the platforms like Facebook, there was one point in time when if you mentioned anything about the lab leak hypothesis, your post would get voided or you'd get blocked. It's just like,
And now it's like
pretty
accepted
like,
thing.
maybe like no one knows for sure, but like it's a valid question.
Yeah.
Like you have to have a discussion. You can't just shut down one side of it. So I tend to lean on the side of free speech, and like obviously I feel like porn and like hard violence shouldn't be free speech. Like there are definitely lines, like doxing, another one that you shouldn't have. You guys know what that is?
Is it like cancel culture?
No, that's where you like
dox it?
where you like basically like reveal someone's like location and address. and
Yeah.
everything.
Oh,
personal
yeah.
information. Like there's stuff like that.
Like
where
what
it's
happened with the
okay.
Supreme Court?
Huh?
What happened with the Supreme Court after the leak about the Roe v. Wade thing? Like,
Oh,
did you
the
not hear about that?
justice?
Yeah, after the it leaked that the Supreme Court was probably going to overturn Roe v. Wade. There was this group called Ruth Sent Us.
They leaked her address?
They leaked the address of Amy Coney Barrett and Justice. Oh my gosh, what's his name?
But anyway.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
like,
anyway, the conservative justices basically, and
That's
and
scary,
then
man.
yeah, people like went to their houses and that like, it was,
that's not okay.
yeah, and they also revealed where Amy Coney Barrett's kids went to school, like elementary school,
Yeah, that's
Jesus.
horrible.
which is horrible. Like that should be illegal, I think, right?
Yeah, were they punished?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
So that's not okay. We need to censor that. Okay, like stuff like that. It's like there is no discussion happening with that. That's just purely malicious.
Yeah.
So that needs to be restricted. What do you guys think?
Well, I guess first you'd have to think like, what is the role of government? Like,
Yeah,
what's the purpose of government? And then you kind of get to like, well, is it their role to control any of this sort of speech? So like, what do you guys think is the primary purpose of the
Well,
government?
I mean, a lot of people say like it's like taking away freedom to provide safety. So like,
Okay.
would you like
How so?
like isn't that like the whole thing behind government? It's like we need to establish like a government to like keep the people safe, but like in doing so, you're gonna have certain freedoms taken away.
Yeah.
Like for like more like quote safe governments, like the people are less free. Like would you like I would say the whole wouldn't necessarily say that this is always true, but like when governments claim to be like we're doing this to keep our people safe, it's like they're doing that to like take away more freedoms of the people.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, Ben Franklin also said like, those who would sacrifice freedom for temporary safety deserve neither and will get neither or something. I don't remember exactly. But he's saying like, if you sacrifice your freedom in order to have safety,
You'll have
like
neither.
you're not going to get either of those things. You're just going to lose your freedom and it's not going to be safe
Yeah.
either. So I would say, I think the purpose of government more is to like protect the people of its citizens in like physically and also like natural rights. It's the natural rights of its citizens.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? So like it's not just like protection from outside forces, but it's also protection from
From each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like it's there to provide stability, and it's there to serve the citizens. Like, right? Because like we learned about that in history. That was like a fundamental shift that came from Enlightenment ideas. Was that what was it called? The
Social contract.
social contract, where officials are there to serve the people. They're not there to maintain power. And I think the way that you maintain that, and the way that you make sure that the government doesn't become too powerful, is that you ensure, one of the ways that you do that is that you ensure that people have a free dialogue and they're able to speak their mind, speak out against the government. Because like we don't have that all across the world. Some countries, citizens aren't able to speak out against the government. That's usually in the governments where human rights are the worst.
Well, even in Canada or Australia, New Zealand, like think like pretty liberal, like first world countries, like there are people in jail for saying things that the government didn't like. Like for example, like in Canada, there's a father who's in jail because he didn't want to allow his daughter to have a sex change surgery.
Is that true? Can we pull that up?
Just look up like Canada father in jail transgender or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Jail, yeah, there it popped up. Calling daughter a she. For calling daughter she.
There's no way.
After misgendering
Okay,
his
that's
daughter.
look at New
No.
York Post, because that's like a liberal. Breitbart is a very conservative.
Defiance of court's order.
Are you serious?
There's no way.
That is ridiculous.
Right? And so
So
this
how-
is like what we were talking about with parenting, like the way that he wanted to raise his child is like not in this whole in this whole like transgender world, and I think he and his wife are divorced, and so the wife wanted this for her child and the dad was like no. And so
So how long is he in jail for then?
I
Can
don't
we
know.
scroll? Scroll the bottom, will you? Can you scroll? Keep scrolling. Okay, so it doesn't say how long his sentence is. But in any case, I feel like that's overstepping.
Yeah,
Definitely.
obviously. Like if the government is overstepping a parent's rights to, because we talked about like parent censorship, so like the parent has a right to like raise their child in the way that they see fit.
Yeah.
And obviously if they're harming their child, which I guess obviously Canada would say they are harming their child by not allowing this.
Wait, but is this like,
But
you said the dad's divorced with his,
I think so.
so does like the mom, did the mom was like, oh yeah, you can do hormone therapy, and then he was like,
Yeah, that's the sense I got from it. I haven't read into it a ton, but just like
because at that, is it like, did the mom have like, did she have custody of the child, and that's why?
maybe, but even so, like
He was just speaking.
Like,
out.
what this headline says is that he didn't want to like call his daughter a she or a he or whichever one. I don't remember which way that. And that's like
That's dystopian.
right.
That's what we see in Brave New World in 1984. That's why you can't dabble with censorship. You can't just be like, oh, we're just gonna censor this, but you know, like the vast majority of things we're not gonna censor. Because like once you as a citizen consent to any one institution censoring you, you open the door for more censorship in the future. So like if we allow this where it's like you can get jailed for your speech, that's only gonna like slide into other things, and then it turns into dystopian society. So I think as much as possible we need to stop this. like early stuff before it slides. That would be my argument. Any thoughts?
No, I agree with that.
But like, okay, let's go back to government as serving the people and like us giving up our freedom. I feel like traditional dictatorships, they always, like, you can't just take over someone's rights without a reason. It's like, I'm sure like in Nazi Germany and Japan and all that sort of stuff, the argument for them giving up their rights and being okay with the dictatorship, like there had to be some payoff. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think the payoff was that, hey, we're doing this for you, we're doing this for our country. Like, yeah, you're not as free, but the trade-off is that you're safer, our country is going to be better for it, and like there's all these pros. So I think we also need to be careful of like those government promises where it's like, yeah, you're going to give up your freedom, but some promise. And a lot of times that promise is misleading, and it can lead you to give up your power.
Yeah, like in Germany, it was like they were scapegoating the Jews, so we're going to get rid of this, and then we're going to have a greater society, like the Aryan, whatever. And then in Japan, I think it was more, correct me if I'm wrong, you read the book on this, but it was more like Japan, the emperor is like a deity, right?
Yeah.
So like you're serving the deity, you're doing this all for the common good of Japan. You're like strengthening the empire. But yeah, what was I gonna say? Like, how does that connect to America? I guess like what do you think the promise is that they're trying to espouse by like censoring, by allowing this type of censorship? Or like,
I think what this is that right now, wokeism and like the liberal side is like really, it's more powerful right now. Like that's where public opinion is kind of slanting. It's like you see it in like Hollywood and like all these different places, cancel culture, where it's like those people have a lot of power to take your career away. So you have to appease them in a lot of ways. So I think what this is politicians and government officials see that and they're like bending a little bit in that way.
They can see that there's power there.
Yeah.
And also, perhaps it's like the promise is like personal freedom, like, because this whole idea, I think it really came from the sexual revolution. Like, you can do whatever you want with your body, and that's kind of where transgenderism found its roots. And so like this, so then they're promising this freedom, and this, like, they say this free speech takes away that freedom, and so that's why they're able to like censor that. I think that's kind of where it's coming from.
Wait, can you explain that? What do you mean?
So like we talked about how you said there's this like promise that Germany had to say, like, we're going to make a greater country if we just like take away your freedoms, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So like the promise right now is that we're going to have more freedom, like personal freedom. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want, like whatever you please.
More freedom for a specific group of people.
Right.
But that comes at the cost of less freedom for other people. Like, my freedom is restricted when every time I come up to someone who's transgender, I have to think through their pronouns, and if I mess up, there's a chance that I could be cast out, like ridiculed and like canceled. It's like that's restricting my freedom because I have to, because their rights become
a responsibility.
My responsibility.
And I'm not saying that it makes sense or it's like just, but I'm saying that's the promise. That's where it's coming from.
It's the same template that they're using. I think that's another example of us giving up freedom is what rights are fundamentally is everyone else's responsibility. It's like your right to property, to all these sorts of American rights, like it's my responsibility to uphold it.
Oh, we're at an hour. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I mean,
Any closing thoughts?
I think
I don't have much to say.
we can continue kind of on this thread in the next.
The next segment.
Yeah. Because I
Sweet.
think this was really fruitful.
All right. Wrap it up, episode 4.
Sweet.
Later.